Okay, let's just get right into it. Welcome to today's explainer. If you've been spending months or maybe even years trying to master English, but you still completely freeze up when it's time to actually speak, well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating learning strategy that completely dismantles this trap. We are going to look at how a carefully selected group of just 521 words can entirely replace the exhausting memorization that's been holding you back. So get ready because we're about to completely restructure how you think about language acquisition. 170,000. That is the staggering, honestly overwhelming number of words currently sitting in the English dictionary. Be honest with yourself for a second. When you hear that massive number, how does your chest feel? If you're feeling a sudden wave of stress, that is a completely normal reaction. The sheer volume of the language is intimidating. I mean, a physical dictionary that size could probably double as a doorstop, right? And because of it, we fall into this trap of believing that true fluency means knowing more and more and more words. So we end up staring at this massive, heavy dictionary, asking the panicked question that literally every learner asks at some point. How can I ever learn all of that? Well, here is the incredibly freeing, scientifically backed answer that I found so fascinating. You absolutely do not have to. In fact, trying to learn all of it is exactly the thing that's keeping you silent. Even native English speakers don't use anywhere near that many words in their daily lives. Most normal, everyday conversations actually just rely on a tiny, repetitive group of very simple words. And this brings us right to the core of this new learning strategy. The big myth here is that you have to memorize thousands of words and these complex grammar rules to be a good English speaker. But the reality, you really only need to master 521 high-frequency words. It's not your memory that's the issue, and it is definitely not your intelligence. The real culprit is just a traditional strategy that prioritizes volume over practical repetition. If you're just collecting vocabulary without actually knowing how to use it, you're always going to feel afraid to speak. Actually, before we go any further, we need to completely redefine our goal here. Fluency does not mean using huge, complicated words or speaking at lightning speed. It really just means speaking smoothly, without fear, and without constantly stopping to translate everything in your head. And here's the secret. That smooth, fearless speaking, it only happens when your brain feels safe. And your brain only feels safe and relaxed when the words you are using are incredibly familiar to you. So how do we make the brain feel safe? By restricting our entire focus to exactly 521 high-frequency words. We aren't talking about complicated academic jargon here. We mean simple pronouns like I and you, basic verbs like make and go, and daily nouns like time or food. You probably already know almost all of these. The real magic of this learning strategy is in taking those super familiar words and using them to create thousands of unique sentences. There's this brilliant way to think about how we actually put these words to work. Sentence patterns are like roads, and words are like cars. If you spend years collecting hundreds of shiny new vocabulary cars, but you never build any roads to drive them on, you're basically just going to be stuck in a massive mental traffic jam. When it's time to speak, you freeze, because the cars literally can't go anywhere. You don't need a bigger garage full of words, you just need a few strong, clear roads that you can use over and over again. So instead of studying heavy, confusing grammar textbooks, your learning strategy needs to pivot to mastering these 5 simple structural patterns. I want to, I need to, I am going to, I like to, and I have to. Think about how a toddler learns a language. They certainly don't study a dictionary. They just listen to simple words every day, and they repeat the exact same patterns again and again. These 5 simple patterns alone allow you to express your desires, your daily requirements, your future plans, your feelings, and your responsibilities.
Now, the real power here is what we can call the multiplier effect. Just notice how combining one core pattern with our basic words unlocks massive conversational ability. Let's take I want to, and just plug in a high-frequency verb. I want to eat. I want to sleep. I want to learn. I want to work. The structural pattern stays exactly the same, only the action changes. Then you do the exact same thing with I need to go or I need to call. With just a handful of verbs and these basic roads, you instantly communicate hundreds of ideas.
When you sit there and study rules and tenses, the grammar stays trapped in the book, and honestly, trapped in your head. But sentence patterns, they go directly into your mouth. Your brain naturally loves patterns. When it sees the same structure repeatedly, it automatically remembers it, which totally removes the need to stop and think. Native speakers aren't pausing to do mental gymnastics with complex grammar rules before they open their mouths. They're simply relying on these deeply ingrained patterns that they've repeated thousands of times. Okay, so how do we actually build this into an actionable daily learning strategy? Well, to develop this real life survival English, you need to bring the language right into your actual day. Step one, choose a super familiar topic you don't have to think hard about, maybe your morning routine, your job, your home. Step two, form just 5 simple sentences using our patterns. And step three, and this is absolutely crucial, do it out loud. Speaking is a physical skill, so you literally must physically train your mouth for just 10 minutes a day. I know exactly what some of you are thinking right now. Okay, but what if I make a mistake? Have you ever completely panicked while ordering a coffee because you were desperately trying to remember the past perfect tense? Take a really simple phrase like, yesterday I go to work. Is that perfect past tense grammar? No, it's not. But is the message perfectly clear to whoever is listening? Absolutely. Even if you completely mess up the tense, your message gets across perfectly. And that is real fluency, because the ultimate goal of human communication is simply to be understood. Which brings us to a really deep underlying issue for most learners: fear. Your fear doesn't actually come from the English language itself. It comes from the crushing, completely unnecessary pressure to sound absolutely perfect. It's that quiet little voice constantly asking, what if I'm wrong? But here is a perspective that changes everything. People do not judge your grammar. They feel your confidence. When you speak clearly using simple patterns, people respect you just for trying. They are listening to your ideas. They are not grading your verb tenses. Ultimately, we need a total mindset shift. English is not a test where you lose points for every small mistake you make. English is merely a tool. You aren't using this tool to impress people with big vocabulary words or flawless academic grammar. You're using it to share your feelings, to do your daily work, ask for help, and just be understood in the world. Once you drop the pressure of the test and fully embrace the tool, your brain finally feels safe enough to speak. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to wrap up our explainer today. A lot of learners think they need to feel confident before they start speaking. But the truth of this learning strategy is that confidence only comes after speaking. It comes from the physical action of repeating simple patterns out loud day after day. You will never feel fully ready. So, knowing this 5-2-1 word strategy, what choice are you going to make right now? Will you go back to studying in silence, or will you take one small step forward and speak your first 5 simple sentences out loud today? The choice is entirely yours.